All right, let's get this going. Okay, so we're going to do a critique of Howard's shot here. Hi, Howard. How's it going? Thanks for, I'm doing good. Thanks for sending this in. I had a look at what you had going on here, and there's a couple questions I have for you before we dive into your shot. The biggest one is, what was actually your intent with it? Were you trying to copy that reference verbatim, or were you trying to just give that character you're animating the same sort of personality and same sort of general action? Are you reinterpreting it, or what was your intent? Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly what the point I was going to make is trying to do it verbatim is not going to work because they're very different characters, right? One's in sort of like an Iron Man-like suit, which is going to have its own limitations, and the other one is in like a leotard kind of thing. So, and doing sort of Aladdin-like movements. So there's certain limitations to what the costume that character is wearing, but also just physics-wise, the fact that they're wearing this is going to, making them harder to get them to start moving and harder for them to stop, right? So some of these actions don't look right with that kind of character because it makes them look too light. So you're going to have to extract what's important from that reference, get the essence of that motion. You can make it look very similar, but you have to work within the limitations of the character and also the intent of what you're trying to get across with it. So let's have a quick look. Let me get out of full screen here. First, I want to take a look at your reference character. So she pulls the gun out from behind her back, whips it up, spins on her finger, stumbles with it, tries to grab it, knocks it up off screen, zips over, grabs it, and then where does the other gun come from? She suddenly pulls out two guns. I won't ask. Oh, they just magically appear in her hands. Chink. Right there. Gonna flip out from nowhere. Shwink. Okay. Alright, so first step is interpret your reference. Alright? Now, lithe young girl with bodysuit on. It's her flair here, right? That's important. The way she throws that up and then rocks back onto her one leg like that, right? Pay attention here to the weight. Right, so she zips forward. That's a quick shuffle, right? She's pushing with her back foot, stops with her right foot, right, and then jams in there, pulls out the gun in one smooth motion. That step forward is the anticipation for the gun throwing. And then she settles back. Weight is all on her left leg. The right leg, she has hyperextended. If she actually put weight on that, she would probably really hurt herself. You can see her hip is cocked to the one side. Her chest is not just twisted, but it's tilted. You can't really see very well from this angle. But her weight is very squarely over her left foot. I don't mean screen left, I mean her left. And she holds in that quite confidently, spins the gun, then she loses all confidence as it drops. Notice her foot twisting into a very awkward sort of pose. Right? And as she drops down, all her weight shifts to that front right foot. Now here's a problem here with this reference, right here. She, as I said, she has all her weight on her right foot, and she's already overbalanced. She should fall over. Instead, something weird happens. She pivots on that right foot and starts to shift it. And her left foot stays planted on the, like in space while she's up on her tiptoe. She's taken all her, I don't know where the hell her weight has gone. If she's dropping herself, why doesn't she suddenly fall on her knees? And then she pushes from somewhere. I mean, you can see where her center of gravity is. It's way in front of her feet. And she manages to go into this incredibly awkward off-balance pose. And then zips over. This is straight out of Aladdin. Right? You've seen me go through this before at Bardell. That Aladdin scene in that the song One Step Ahead, where he like zips underneath the guard's sword and all that kind of stuff. Well, this pose follows all those same rules that I talked about with that, none of which you caught in your version. We'll go through that in a second. All right, so she grabs the gun, weight goes back onto her left foot while she stands up, shifts back again to her right, and then she plants back on that left, drawing the guns. All right, so I got this in harmony. I'm zoomed right in so we can see this a bit better. All right, so she shuffles forward, weight is firmly on this foot right here as this one slides forward. And then you see where that weight shift, or that the friction changes. She's briefly sliding, and then this foot starts to grab, and then this one is starting to slide forward. Go. And this is the point where she's at her lowest. And now her general, like her sorry, she's gonna drive me nuts. You got to track where her center of gravity is going, right? She slides forward and then she arcs up. This thing is drawing as slow as molasses. No, it's not. It's the fact that I'm doing a screen capture at the same time, I think. All right, so here, weight is kind of draw. Damn you, draw. The weight is sort of evenly distributed when she reaches her peak. And when she starts to relax back into her final pose, the weight shifts back this way. And it's all on this foot. Draw. And she's barely touching this heel. But look at the slope of this leg, right? She's hyperextending her knee. She's getting a really strong line of action going here, right? This arm is working into this leg, right? It's very, very smooth. And this leg is working up through the head. All interrelates. This arm is trying not to get in the way. And it, if you see, flows into the other leg. You see how it does that? Looks a little confusing like that, but you can see how they all interrelate. That pose, she kind of holds through this. It's a moving hold, right? From here all the way through this is the same pose. I mean, there's some of the elements change, like her focus comes towards the camera, and the arm, of course, after she does the throw, settles down, but you see how it still relates to the other arm. There's still flow throughout this whole thing. And balance, right? If you look at her center of gravity, it's still, come on, draw. It's still over this foot. Now it's drawn. All right. Now when she stumbles and does this part, here's what we want to change. Okay? This part here, which makes no sense whatsoever. First of all, her foot's in the wrong place, so she looks like she has a wire on her back that's holding her in place, and she is moving the foot that has weight on it. So I think when she stretches forward to grab this, that foot's got to come out, and on your character. Like, they can do what they want with this, but maybe it's part of their whole style. Oh my God, just draw. You still want to have the foot turned in. I think you'd be better off with a pencil tool. Let me just try that. If she was to plant, oh yeah, he's going faster. There you go. If she was to plant her foot out here, so, well, she could, well, the thing is, yeah, if she has weight on it, she can pivot on it, but she can't lift it up. So once she starts to stumble, I would pivot and get her foot flatter there so that she can logically bend down into this. Actually, let's tell you what. Let's stop dealing with her. We know what she needs to do. Let's look at your character. Okay, right off the bat, there's a little bit of a difference between the attitude in her pose and your character's. She's got her fists up, right? Like she's boxing or defending herself, right? Your guy, is this a guy or a girl? Girl? Okay, she's got her guard down. And the fact that she's got her hand down here means that, you know, she's not defending herself properly. Look at where the hand is in relation to the face on the other character, right? If you want to get, you know, if you want to get your defense up, you get that arm up so it's blocking your face. So if a punch comes in, you can block your face, right? Same thing with the other hand. It's useless down where it is. You need to bring it up. Now, you don't need to have the other one visible. As long as the elbow is visible, you'll know where the hand is, right? So if the hand's up like that, then that character's defending themselves. Now remember what we've talked about in the past with like rest side and busy side? It's clear what the rest side is on that character, right? With the way you've got the hips kind of thrown back on yours, you've created kind of two busy sides. So if you want to simplify this silhouette, push the hips out towards camera a bit so you can get more of a smoothness to this. It means that the chest will come forward a little bit, maybe. But you'll get this smoothness here, and it'll push in more there. All right. And also, if this is a defensive sort of pose and they're ready to fight, having the head up like this, or the eye angle up, kind of defeats that as well. I would keep the head back, but angle it down a bit more. It's a lot more kind of ready for battle than having it angled up. Okay, so here comes the push. And the first thing is you've put this poor girl's knees under so much stress throughout this shot. I feel her pain throughout it all. Here's the rule. I mean, if you ever have gone to the gym or anything like that, or done any kind of sports stuff, if you don't have your knee over your foot, if you're looking from the front and you throw your knee out to the side and you've got your foot like facing forward, and your knee is like out to the side this way, or you pull it in too much to this side, you're going to really damage your knee joint, right? You've got to try and keep it balanced over your knee. So if you're going to turn your knee out, your foot has to turn too, right? So if you look here, I mean, there's limits to it, right? She has her knee starting to come forward, like it's coming a little bit more towards camera here, and yet her foot is still sideways. So there is a bit of play with that. But what you've done here is you've tried to stretch the foot forward while the hips are hanging back here and still turned towards camera, and this leg, you've pointed the knee out the other way and you're trying to push kind of backwards with the foot. All right, sort of like doing the splits, which is incredibly awkward and not a powerful position, right? You want to be pushing with all the strength you can, but only the strength that you need to. Remember, people will only use as much energy as is necessary to perform a task. You won't put excessive energy in or put yourself out of position to do something if there isn't a real need for it. So again, look at this angle, right? Look how smooth that is. So get those hips forward. What she's doing by pushing with this leg and turning that knee in, right, in towards camera. Yes, stop bothering with that. If this is like the kneecap here, then this foot is going to start angling, like you're pushing from the side of the foot a bit, right? That knee is now coming, you know what I mean? It's like towards the screen, but that pushing with that leg shoves the hips, so the hips will be out here more and turning towards camera. It'll actually be angled past us right now. which puts this leg like shoved forward, and it's starting to slide. Right, so you want to get that foot sliding forward. You can enhance this even more if you want. And as she does that, as she pushes, she's not just pushing forward, she's pushing up too, right? So it sends the hips that way, sends the torso up that way, forward and up. That's why she's starting to stretch out here, right? You get this twist in the torso, and the hands coming out. Now the other hand, look on your character there, right? The hands start to fly out to the sides. Torso forward, the head's starting to hang behind. Do you know why that is? Why is the head the last to go? Nope. Yeah, well, yes, but what causes that overlap? Remember what I've taught you before. It's not gravity, it's inertia. Okay? You always have to think, where is the energy being created from and where is it going? So where is she pushing from? Like, where is the energy coming from in this case? Yeah, well, she's pushing down on the ground, right? Down and back. And good old force pairs, remember your physics, the ground is pushing back with an equal and opposite force. So the force that's actually shoving her forward and up is coming from the ground. I know it sounds counterintuitive. She applies force downward into the ground applies force back and forward, right? And that's where this energy is coming from. So think of it as, I'll change the color here. Think of it as energy that's radiating out this way, like ripples in a pond, okay? It takes time for that energy to travel up through her body. So the closest parts, the knee, the hip, the chest, the head, they all receive it in order. So the first thing that gets moved is that leg, and since it's directly kind of straight in line with the hips move pretty quickly too. Followed by the torso. The torso gets taken along for the ride. There's also muscles in there in play that she's holding herself tight, so she won't flop back. There won't be a huge amount of drag. But the head's a big heavy thing too, right? So as that body starts moving forward, it takes a fraction of a second for the head to start moving. There's nothing that's going to drag the head along other than the fact that the neck is connected to the body, right? So the farthest point away from the energy is the head. That's not, I don't mean that to be your head, I was trying to circle it. That's going to be the last thing to move, and that's where your strongest drag is going to be. Make sense? Always think of it that way. Where is the energy coming from? What's the last thing in the chain? That's where the drag is going to be the heaviest. And after everything else happens. Let's get away from this ugly frame. All right, so once that slide happens, see, you haven't really got the slide going in here. You have kind of just a shifting of weight and a really fast throw of that knee from way at the back to way at the front. Right? You need to push through that. You notice in the reference, it starts off pointing kind of sideways, and then from there it just starts angling forward as she pushes and slides. It's a smooth transition. You need to get that in there to show the push and show the shift, but you need to slide her torso forward before you get into that crouch. Now there's, again, you have her pull the gun out, but it's so quick. You also haven't shown where the gun's coming from, because silhouette-wise, all of this is all contained, right? You've left no negative space to see where she's pulling the gun from. So if you look back here, it's pretty, she only has her hand behind her back briefly, but then as she's coming forward, it's really, really clear with that negative space how she's bringing it forward. Tons of time at the bottom before she ever gets up to that point. So for here on you've got to get some clarity in that arm, right? You've got to show where that gun is coming from. And also it helps establish your arc. Whoops, that didn't work. It helps establish that arc of where the arm is, is dragging through, right? God, now it's drawing poorly again, even with the pencil. So you want to be able to see that arm come up and through in order to get that flow to it. And again, here's where you've kind of broken the pose. You've broken the flow of the pose because you haven't got that. You got to get that foot forward, like right from the point where you have the slide happening. This foot's got to be planted farther forward, so that you can get that that hyperextended knee thing going on. Tilt that hip, right? Because that's where you show that the weight is on this back foot. Right? Without that tilt, and without this leg hyperextended and up on the, if she goes up on her heel, you won't see the weight is shifted over here. Also, you can't keep the chest back there. Right? As she throws through, you have to have that chest start to lean over to screen right here, because that's going to help. She's leaned her hips this way. That means the hips or the chest has got to go the other way, but just to counterbalance, right? So that you can get that weight over here. Get that flow up through the arm. Now, don't let this other arm get in the way. Right now, where you've put it down, you put the hand really low. It's creating a flow into nothing. Right? You want to keep it up high so that it will flow into this other leg. Right? So pop that elbow up. Get the hands behind if you need to. Like if this character's arms are too long, put the balled fist behind her hip, so it's kind of more on her ass. So that way you get this smoother flow through the arm and leg. All right. Same thing with the head. Make sure it's in a logical place for this character that leaves some negative space with the arm and shows her direction, but it also stays in the flow of this central line of action. All right. Don't pop it too far forward or get it lost in the arm. All right, she sinks back into this pose. You have her kind of stumble back, and she is leaning this way. Oh, come on, pen. There we go. You have her starting to lean that way. It's exactly opposite what you should do. As she leans, starts to move backwards, she has to start leaning slightly to screen right. Getting that arch, getting the hips popped over here. Notice the angle of the hips on your reference character, right? You got to get something very similar in yours that works with the style of this character. It might not be as extreme. It might not be as possible to stretch out the torso the same way, but you do need to get the essence of chest is going this way, hips are going that way, right? And then getting that leg hyperextended. You can do that with this character. You're going to need to pull that foot forward more. Getting that weight back on this foot. You might need to experiment a little bit with which way to turn the foot to make that read properly. But apart from that, it should work fine. There, now when it sinks in, same problem. Okay, I won't bother to draw that one over. And then when she starts her big move here. Okay, here's where it all breaks to pieces. Again, you're working from reference that didn't quite work for you. The biggest problem is this arm. And somebody else I know has called this out on the website you put this onto. Here's the problem, though. You're thinking about flapping the arm around to get a big anticipation for the scoop, right? But it's not about that, because nobody's actually paying attention to that hand. They're all looking at the relationship between the head and the gun. That's where their eyes are. Okay? So you go throwing this arm all over the place here. Come on, pen. Really? Yes, I want to say my work. You start throwing the hand all over the place, you're going to start distracting them. They're going to start looking at this hand and not over here where they're supposed to be. I would have put a prop in here, first of all, for your own sake, so you had an idea of what was being focused on. Putting it in later is a bad idea, even if it's just a ball or something. you need to be able to track, how fast the objects move, so you know where to have your character looking, where to have them aim with their hand movements and all that kind of stuff, right? Also, when you're tracking the arc for this, you want to track the hand. Okay, so if we're tracking this hand, and it's up here, right, and it's down here, so already we're kind of dropping straight down. And then it's out here. Oops, come on. Keep up, will you? So it's doing kind of a reverse L. Then all of a sudden, we're flashing out here. And then it kind of stays contained in the body. And then it gets lost. Right? So we did this kind of thing. Right? Not ideal to show scooping and aiming towards this. So it's really not essential to see that hand until it comes out on the busy side. Right? Keep this side as your rest side. And that means not having that arm pop out. So the best thing of all would be keep the hand. I mean, you want to see this pose, sure, the oh my god sort of thing. So, you can have the hand out here while keeping the elbows in tight is going to be more feminine than flaring them out, first of all. So let's work from that. Come on. Okay, so let's get the shoulders up, get the elbows in tight. You can do that from both sides if you want. And then hands out. Then when she starts to come through like this, I would bring the hands in through. Oh, actually, hang on a second. We've got this overlapped. Let's say that again. Okay. So you keep her elbow in tight here as she starts to reach the gun, but I would keep this elbow in tight as well and let the hand start to come across her body. You won't see it very much, but you're going to feel the elbow in tight. You're going to feel this whole rest side, right? While you're looking at the busy side. Now, here's where you start to absolutely destroy her poor ankles and knees. This foot has got to pivot out a bit more, right? You still want to keep it kind of awkward as you are, but that knee's got to start coming towards camera, and that foot's got to start to pivot. Otherwise, her ankle will snap. And don't let this knee get too low. You might have to raise her hips a bit more to prevent this from getting too far down. Let that foot pivot as well, right? She is shifting. She's light on her feet because she's dropping her weight, right? Because she's falling down, it takes the pressure off her feet, and she's able to shift them underneath them because she doesn't have her weight on anymore. She just removed your weight by letting herself drop. So this is your chance, your one chance to shift those feet. And I said, this is where it kind of goes wrong with the reference. I think that you need to see, like right here, you've got her so low, but back over this foot, that her knee has broken, her ankle has completely snapped, and this one has just snapped. She just fall to pieces on the ground right there. Like, if you're going to get her that low, you've got to get her farther forward. Right? If you're going to bring her hips, come on, draw, forward to the point where her knee is not breaking that ankle as much, and you can get her on her toe, right? So her foot is bent, her ankle is not quite so snapped, but this other knee's got to be coming forward. Look at your reference there. I mean, she's actually popping her hips up. If I look back, I'd say her hips are probably, her hips are moving up at this point, and her chest is still kind of, actually it's starting to rise now too. It'd be better to actually overlap that a bit. As the hips rise, the chest continues to come down. That would actually have a better look to it. So once she's shifted her hips like that, she's really got to move forward through this. Like you've got her hanging back way too far. And keep her elbow in here, get her hand out the side, right? So she's scooping away at, actually she's in her second hit. Yeah, she's used her left hand there to hit at it. All right, so you can start from down low here, but in front of her body, and then swing that arm up to make the grab. You know what I mean? So it stays contained inside, and then comes out to do the swoop, keeping this all nice and smooth, and not making it busy on both sides. Now, as she comes up and she does all this stuff, again, see how straight this gets, but as she starts to get off balance, you at least want to keep that idea. So get the hips forward. They're way too far back right now. She goes up on her toes, but like I said, I would plant that foot a little bit farther forward, like shift her foot out for when she starts doing all this. You can still keep her awkward if you want, but you want to get that flow going through the body. Her hips are turned. Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah, you're going to have to, shift the whole COG forward there, and then angle the. You can counter animate. I mean, sometimes you can, if the rig has it, there'll be a separate control for the hips, so you can make little adjustments like this. You can actually just push it forward or back, or tilt them, so you can change the, where the weight is over each foot. Really, really helpful when that's in a rig. To make those little adjustments later, but you don't want to rely on them when you're doing your first blocking. You want to think through this stuff first, right? It's only later, if you need to make some changes, you want to start adjusting that, but don't ever pose that separate hip joint in your first pass on things. You don't want to make it part of your process, because then you're double translating things, right? It's a polish. It's a thing for polish later, or if you're too far committed. Now this pose becomes a jumble here. Like this whole process of stumbling is getting lost in the fact that everything is busy, right? Busy everywhere. So let's simplify, okay? Again, it's also too busy and off balance in their pose, right? Since we got this leg a little bit more forward in your new version, we have got a smooth inside thing going. We want to keep the elbows out to try and prevent this from getting destroyed, right? So all the stumbling you do with the hands up here, keep them away from the face. Always keep it away from the face, right? But no matter what they're doing with the hands, it doesn't matter if they cross each other over, but try and keep them out of this area. You don't want the elbows doing too much of this kind of thing, right? Do it from the forearms. I know you can't see me. You'll see me later when I send you this video. I'm looking at you right now, Howard. So when you're watching this later, watch the elbows. Instead of making the action of throwing coming from the shoulders, once you've got her up there, you keep the elbows up and make it all about forearms and the hands. All right? That'll keep this whole area open and clear, and you'll be able to see the stretch up through the back and through that back leg. This will be a lot clearer than the jumble that it is right now. And if you need to, lean the head back more, or get it out of the way if you can, to kind of open up the negative space right here, so that we can see that struggle a lot more. And do put an object in there. You want to see how that works into that whole dynamic. Okay, so she really stretches forward as the gun starts to fall forward. So instead of, as I say, making a huge mess out of that, let's get. You have a couple of options. Because we have that leg forward, you can do something that's similar to what you had at the beginning, where she is hyperextending that knee. She really does have the pressure on the back foot. It might be a nice little echo of that first action. Yes, I want to save my work. Or you could make it all about the hands and just rock those hips forward. Get that foot planted. Oh, it's not very good drawing. This going so slow. Maybe not as feminine or as appealing. But she'll at least be balanced. Come on, move. There we go. Yeah, then when she does this, the stretch. Actually, it might be good to have the hyperextension thing because then when she does do this stretch, you can start to slide this foot a little bit back, as long as this one stays on the ground at the same time. It's sort of like, if you're watching a figure skater, going from something like almost like the splits and then bringing their legs together back into a standing pose. You want to keep that hand in tight so that you can feel that. It is very much like figure skating at this point. Right? You want to feel the femininity in this pose. You want to feel the stretch, right? That means that, see, this head's belying it, right? Get that chin up. Get the eye line way up there so that you can feel that stretch coming all the way from the leg up through that arm, okay? I see this a lot actually in your work is you stop paying attention to how all these parts are relating to each other. You're thinking of individual body parts and you're not thinking of the flow of how they relate to each other and this is the basic shape that you're working off of for this right now. Okay, it's like an arrow pointed upwards. And without paying attention to how those legs relate to that outstretched arm, you're going to miss this. Also, if you just throw that other arm in there doing something else, it's going to belie it. You could have that arm stretched down here, but there's no point because it will draw attention to itself when it comes down. Keeping it up there means making sure this elbow is pointed down along those legs. Right? They have that here in the original pose. They were thinking through that. What they weren't thinking through was their balance very well. And this hand curving in towards the body is important too, because if you just look at how the composition of this flows, we see this coming up through the leg. If they start to look at that hand, it points back towards the head. The head's pointing up towards the arm. Everything is related to everything else. If you put in anything in here that starts to throw attention away, like saying have the hand stretched out this way, now all of a sudden you've introduced some new line here, right? And that's going totally counter to where we want this flow to go. Does that make sense? Yeah, so even this hand has to keep that flow going. So after all that, she starts to sink. She holds this pose. But look what's going on with this arm. Oops. This arm is starting to draw attention to itself, right? Fingers spread out. It looks like you've done a still frame of somebody in mid-flight or something. We've lost the feeling of frozen moment, but also it's an anticipation of what's going to come next. If you remember, she does the Aladdin thing here next, right? So we need to we've now switched where the action is going. All the attention was up here. Now it's about changing the audience's idea of what's about to happen next. That's why the head turns here, right? Because she has actually lost the gun and she's tracking it, right? So she's looking, that's not a very good eye line. She's looking up this way and she tracks as it goes across, right? So that's what we want the audience to see right now, is watching her going, oops, as it flies through the air over her head. So keep this arm held out of the way. Keep it where it was, right? Keep that hand and arm, you could turn into a fist or something to show that she's tenser now than she was. We've got that leg kicked up, which is nice and feminine, all that kind of thing, but it's also the anticipation for that next big action. That's the important thing. And I like the way that they've done that, right? They've turned a feminine pose into the precursor for a big, strong Aladdin action. That's really clever. But without it in the right place, you see how when I scrub through, watch where her foot goes. See this simple arc? Come on, draw. Do you see this simple arc that it describes? Boom, boom, right? And her whole body becomes this arc. Oh, not a straight line. Keep up, pen. It becomes this arc. It follows that arc, right? The foot is straight out. The head is pointing this way. The arm and hand are out there. Even this knee doesn't get in the way, right? And then it quickly zips to the other side, but along that arc, right? Even in one frame, it's zipping along this arc. You see that? Without establishing a strong arc like that, you will lose this action. So what have you got going on here? Well, first of all, head's pointing the wrong way. Right, so what's she actually looking at? Where's the gun? Where's the gun, Mansley? It's over here, right? It has gone in an arc like this. You knew that, right? Of course. So what the hell is your character looking at? My hand!
I lost my hand! I lost my pride!
Oh, I gotta stick that shot in there. I'll probably get in trouble for it. But. Okay, so don't break the poor knee. You want to keep that knee straighter. Yes, you need to get that leg out, right? You need to get that foot out, right? You need to see that. You need to put the weight onto this leg, which means keeping that foot in line with the knee, right? You need to look. Come on, draw. You have to come up with a better system for this next time. You need to be looking at where that gun is, you know, over here. The hand now becomes unimportant because it just needs to keep back there. But it's, you know, none of the, it's this pose you're really trying to draw. Right, so we've got to still have to keep this other arm out of the way. We do not want to ever interrupt the flow of this line now, right? So I would keep it tight and up here across the body. Make sense? As everything starts to flow this way now. All the action is turned and is going this way, right? This is where the torso starts to bend in the reference, right? Yeah. Torso starts to bend over. Everything else is still. Oh God, this drawing is going to drive me crazy. Right, the knee is turned upward. Keep all that flow. I find I'm just digging harder with the pen to try and get it to draw the way I want. Yeah, we want to start really bringing the upper body forward first, right? She's pushing with the leg, but she's using the muscles throughout her whole abdomen and chest now to throw her head and her torso forward into this action because she's reaching. In her mind, what she's doing is, yeah, she's zipping over, but she's trying to get her hands there as fast as possible. It won't matter if her feet get there first, right? She is trying to accelerate her upper body into this, right? So she, the hands are starting to move. Oh, come on, draw. There we go. Hands are starting to come down, but still traveling along that arc. This one can start to flash out, but keep it elbow first, right? Think of it like a baseball swing kind of thing. right? So it starts to flow along that. It starts to flow outwards, elbow first, this way. So when you get to this point, I would add, I think it's a little bit too fast here. Now she's using some kind of ability or magic or whatever to get there that fast. Your character doesn't have that, I'm aware of. You've also turned the character too far in yours. Oops. Turn the character too far, and you have her pointing sort of back 3/4. We're looking at too much of her back here. When if you look at the reference, she's much more sideways. Like you're looking at almost a pure profile there. Because that's what she did, was she moved in a direct line to get to that point. She didn't rotate around and spin herself around. You know, she shoved herself and allowed her torso to kind of catch up. But if she's, you know, if you looked at it from the top, she's moving directly in one line. You've done this. Right? With all that force, she shouldn't be able to rotate that far. Right? It would be, you kind of throw her sideways. Her hips would kind of keep going, and she'd fall on her, you know, on her side. So you want to make sure that when she does get down to this pose, and I would add another in between into it before you got here. Make sure that you show that. I add more arc or arch to the back, and really get those arms out, splaying the fingers, getting that extreme I'm going to catch this sort of pose going on here. Right? Without that, and without seeing this curve, you know, like you've got to show that, you know, like that whole body has whipped forward into this. And then when you settle in, you can settle into this kind of pose, like in the reference, right? It's still, you know, still forward, but there's a lot less force going into it. Get that knee out. Get the weight over this foot. It's between, you know, her base is now 3 points, right? It's this toe, this knee, this foot. So she's quite stable. She's able to kind of lean forward into this. And I'd add lots of intensity into the actual grab. And so, you know, you've already thrown the arms out straight. I'd make it all about clenching the hands around it now, right? So just this kind of thing, right? So it's out like that and into the grab. Make sense? I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's that kind of idea, right? So her body's settling down a bit more, so you can feel her momentum, because she was moving forward and throwing herself down. You feel that continue, so that you feel everything sinking into these points of contact. That means that foot is going to flex more. That means that knee is going to kind of impact and maybe bounce a tiny bit, and this foot's really going to plant solid, and that, you know, the hips will still continue to move down a little bit, right? Feel that sinking in, but everything to do with the torso should stay pretty solid in space, right? Because her target is that gun. She's not going to let her upper body shift down, because she would probably stumble with the gun. She'd probably lose it again. It's like if you're trying to carry a cup of tea or something, right? You're not, just because you're walking up some stairs and your body's moving, you know, and shifting, you're not going to let the cup do that too, because it's the end of the line. You'll slosh the tea everywhere. You're going to stabilize. You're going to move your body underneath that hand, and your focus is going to be on your hand to try and keep it level, or try and keep it even while everything else is moving. Make sense? It's about where your focus is. Like if I was walking, forgetting about that cup, and I had like a book on my head as well, and I started focusing on the book, so I didn't make the book fall. Now I'm trying to keep my head steady, and I might accidentally let my hand start moving, and I'm going to spill tea on myself, and then I'm going to drop my book, and I'm going to, what the hell am I doing this for? Why don't I just walk upstairs and have my tea? Sorry, I got off on that tangent. But the point is, you get what you're focusing on. Right? In this case, the character's not concerned about how they're settling. So their hips are going to move down. Everything's going to impact on the ground. All their focus is on the hands. So make sure when those hands are at their strongest stretch, and then when they clutch, they don't move in space. They stay almost exactly where they are. You're just seeing the fingers come in, The hands will move a little bit. I mean, if they're totally locked in space, they're going to look like, you know, somebody's just pinned them to the background. But in their mind, their hands are perfectly still. Got it? All right. See, right now you've got your character sinking, the entire torso sinking down, hands are sinking down. You know, there's a rigidity to this whole draw, please just draw. There's a rigidity to this whole torso and arm area, right? And it's all sinking down as a unit. You don't want that. And she never really grabs. All right, and then as she... Yeah, I'm going to look at the secondary here in a second, because you kind of skipped over how she got from crouched down to how she got standing up, and I'll take a look at this last section in your secondary. Hey. So am I making your brain melt yet? Aha. Yep, I mean, you get what you focus on. Your character does, and you do as well. You know, and if you're doing your blocking based on trying to imitate everything that's in your reference, it's always going to fail. You're not going to notice all the details or what's important. Anytime you're using reference, your first pass is supposed to be picking out those key moments that make the reference look like itself. Actually, if you watched my video that I did with Jeremy Stewart about creature animation, yeah, do you remember when we were in his studio and we were talking about lions? Oh, you gotta watch that part. Oh no! Okay, go watch it. It's at the end. It's we've got a little tack on there where we go into his studio, and we're looking at some reference for lion. We start talking about what is important in that reference. So when we were looking at those lions, we zoomed in on two different parts. We looked at the feet, and then we looked at the shoulders. When you're looking at just the feet, we noticed that every footfall was really soft. It was just like an ordinary cat, right? It did not look heavy. It looked light. It looked delicate. It looked gentle and graceful. Actually, graceful was probably the key thing. There's no heavy footfalls. There's no impact. But when we shifted the camera up and we're just looking at the shoulder blades, you can see, you know, like all that impact is going up through the shoulders. There's tremors in the skin. You know, it looks like something's pounding heavily on, and it looked like a 900-pound animal. So without those two things combined, it doesn't look like a lion. But only by analyzing that a bit at a time, will you understand what's important to get in there. You don't have to get every single little movement, you know, correct. Let me just have a look at your character again. Like what we were saying was, what's important for this character was the feminine movements, right? We wanted her to still look quite feminine. Let me just turn the blocking off. Turn on the spline. All right. Has to look feminine, has to look powerful, but the biggest thing is her focus. When she drops that gun, she's tracking it going across, and then it's all about her getting her hands across the screen to that spot where she is tracked it's going to go, and catching it exactly there, and then holding there while she's like, okay, got it. Then she gets back in her position without that beat. And you want to enhance that beat as much as you can, right? That, oh, got it. Okay, I'm not totally screwing this up. Then back to yours. Because you can tell from the way she's posing and the way she's acting, she's super confident. So to stumble with it is probably super embarrassing to her. So catching it here kind of negates that and covers it up. Then she can get back to her swagger. Let me just bring back in your, let's see the, let's have a look at this one. Yeah, there's some definite improvements there. So you're still breaking the knees, still off balance, and then at the end, yeah, you kept that that bad direction where she went to grab, and she was moving too far backwards instead of sideways. And then where are the hands going? They're scooping down, they're rising up. There's no clear grab, even in your secondary. What's she actually grabbing there? And then what happens with her hand when she comes back? This is where I said you didn't have it in your blocking, but you've kind of thrown a whole lot of extra movements with that screen left hand where she's grabbing a gun from behind her back. What happened to the one she just caught? It would make more sense if that's the hand that she sweeps back with a gun, so you don't have to do all that back and forth stuff. You can just sweep across. Oh, actually, there's a bomb that she's. All right. Okay. Well, then, what you could do is, if she's holding the bomb here, did she put it away and grab a gun? That's what you're saying? Okay. Well, you don't want to lead the action with it, because that will make the pen not want to draw. That's what it'll do. It'll draw way too much attention to all this fiddling. Really, the important part is this, right? Getting into that final pose with the guns. And you've got no clear rest side and busy side anymore, right? You've made both sides busy. So if this side is inherently busy because of the leg being out here, this one's still going to be bent until she gets up. Why not sweep this arm forward, holding the bomb or whatever, or nothing. I guess she'll get her gun in a second, but make this side the busy side where she reaches back with this hand. Clearly, not so much from what I've just drawn, but you can really open up that hand and make it clear that she's reaching behind her back with this hand, so that you'll see the grab while this side stays nice and smooth. Right, she might already have magically gotten the gun in this hand and she's holding it out, while this hand reaches back to put the bomb away and pull out another gun, so that you get this hand is continuing to flow up. She won't. If she does in the reference, she kind of folds them out from her arms. If you still wanted to do that, you could do that. You just get the arm to flow across and up, and then slowly, while the other hand does the reaching behind them. When it pulls out, it's going to pull it without a bomb, right? So it's going to be both hands getting up and ready for guns to suddenly appear, right? And then you want that to happen up above. You want those guns to appear, like in the reference, it's not very clear where it's happening, but here you can make it, incredibly obvious that, here are my gun hands, and then she comes down into this, but keep those hands clear in the end, so that you can fully see, big ass guns. Oops, shoulder's a bit high. But, big ass guns pointing at your face. That looks pretty poor, but you know what I mean. Just keep it a bit clearer. There you are. All right, so does all that make sense? Cool. So why don't you try another pass on it? Just go back to blocking. Just take your original blocking. Just kind of ditch your secondary for your polish for now. Go back and try and get those essential things into that blocking pass. Start moving away from the reference. Now, take the points we talked about, start enhancing all that, look for those lines of action, look for the busy side and the rest side, and make sure your character is making the audience focus on what's important. You're going to do that first with the head, right? Especially that part where the gun goes over her head. Got to lead it with the head. And then we can take another look when you're finished your blocking, and you'll be ready to focus on different things when you go into your polish pass. Then that's when you start getting, that everything is working, your time is working, all the poses are working. So when you go into the polish, you can start dealing with adding those little bits of texture, all those little fine details that will add flavor to it, rather than trying to work out more blocking or primary stuff at the end. Make sense? Very cool. Okay, man. See you soon. All right, take care.